Hello, my name is Yeji, otherwise known as ANdmadeco here on YouTube and on Instagram. So while editing this video, I realized that this will actually be uploaded on March 1st. And that means that I want to go over all of the other finished objects that I have for February. As always, the episode that the finished object was featured in will be linked in the description box below, and I will have pictures of the item as well as the pattern designer up on the screen for you. First, we have episode 19. This was the first week of February, and I finished a lot of objects in this episode because a lot of them were chunky knit hats. But first, I finished a Sophie scarf by Petite Knit, and I sent it to my friend for her birthday, and she received it, and so hopefully she's able to wear it. And this is also the episode where I finished a lot of super bulky hats that I want to take to Korea for my parents. So I finished one Tilda by Annie, as well as a 2x2 hat by Anne Gagnon, and one Vima beanie by Vera Valimaki. And I also made two Twisted Affairs by Hohi Locatelli. And then I also made, with leftover yarns from some of these hats, a cassia hat for my daughter. And we've already worn it in the snow, and this is also the week where it snowed, so I got really great pictures out of the finished objects from this week. And then in episode 20, things had calmed down a little bit, and I finished a Ning beanie, and this was a test knit for Alex from Skeiny Dippin', and she was also the designer behind the cassia hat from episode 19. Ning beanie has since been launched, and I think it's now launched in 3 sizes. When I first tested it, it was only in 2 sizes. I think Alex had added another size just because of all of the feedback of people finding it a little loose, but some people also found it perfect. So I think she just added another size to be safe. And I definitely recommend the pattern if you are looking for a really great top-down, easy cable knit hat. And in episode 20, I also finished a pair of rainbow socks, and the yarn was gifted by Betsy from Maker's Night. And I'm so happy I was able to make those socks. They look amazing and they fit really great as well. In last week's episode, episode 21, I finished Look at My Holes by James and Watts, as well as Debutante Baby Set, but I only made the bonnet from that set by Elizabeth Sullivan. I also finished a pair of socks that are matching with my friend Stella from @MilkEnthusiast on Instagram. And for those socks, it was just a pair of vanilla socks, but I did a shadow wrap heel instead of the heel flap and gusset that I prefer, that I used for my rainbow socks. And in today's episode, I have 2 finished objects to share, so we'll get right into it. Let's jump right into what I'm currently wearing, which is my finished object. And this is the Sunde Tee by Susanna Kartinen. And this was a secret test knit that I couldn't talk about that I started in December, so early December, December 9th of 2024. And I just finished it in January 31st of 2025. And the reason I couldn't talk about it is because, well, the designer asked us to, and this is a part of the Bendigo Project 2025. So the Wool Festival in Australia. For this tee, I think there is a make-along going for it from March 16th until July, whenever the event is in July of this year in 2025. Currently, Susanna has a pattern. I think that's a Sunde sweater, and I will link to that because at this time, the Sunde Tee isn't available on Ravelry, but whenever it is, I will also adjust the description box so that you have both information. And this was knit with a very small needle size. It's a 3.25, a US 3 needle, and the ribbing was done with a US 2, a 2.75 millimeter needle. The construction of this tee is super cool because it's all knit sideways, and we'll get more into that. But first, I want to show you the yarn that I used. For this tee, I used Holskarn Coast, which is 55% wool and 45% cotton, and the main color that I used is Putty, and it's a very light gray color, a very light, cool stone gray color. And the contrast color that I used is, I think, Fauna, but I'm not 100% sure because I bought it as a kind of a mill end thing. I think a lot of the other colors in this pack could have gone well with this tee, but because I didn't want to weave in a ton of ends, I just decided to go with one contrast color and one main color. And I knit the size 3A. The A stands for bust starts, so I knit the size 3, and for my size, I only needed 73 grams of the putty, so 1.5 of a ball of this, as well as all of the 43 grams. I only had a tiny bit left over of the fauna color. I'll stand up and show you what it looks like up close. This tee has a really nice v-neck, and you could make it less shallow if you did more of the ribbing, but because I did run out of yarn, I was getting really close to running out of yarn, so I decided to make the V slightly less shallow, and so it's a little more deep than what it is in the pattern. And also my hem is shorter than what is recommended in the pattern. However, the hem sits at a really good length on my body right now, so I'm quite happy with where it lands. There was one mistake in the pattern that the testers received with the bust darts being too low, but that has since been fixed and will be fine in the new version. But you can see that the bust darts do sit too low on my chest. They're right here. So this tee, because it does have bust darts, is recommended to fit on the upper chest area, and it goes from a 28-inch to a 62 or a 64-inch bust, and so it is quite size inclusive. And with there being bust darts, I think it's even more size inclusive. To be honest, I didn't need the bust darts. I could have gone without it. I don't think there was enough difference from my upper bust measurement to my full bust to go even for the size A. But I really wanted to try it out, especially because this garment is knit sideways, to see what it would be like. And I'm happy I tried it, even though it sits low. I don't think you can really tell that there are bust darts when you look at it from far away, or even when you're up close. I think it's quite hidden, so it's fine. But I would have liked it to be a little bit higher just to see if it would have made a difference. But I know that for my body measurements and for the amount of ease that I have in this garment, that I really didn't need it. Before we get into the construction of this garment, I want to say that this is one of the smartest designs that I've ever seen and that I've ever had the pleasure of making. So Susanna goes and she lets you know which row of the stripe pattern you will be at when you join, and all of the stripes are very well placed where it's all joined at the correct places. However, I will say that this pattern is pretty fiddly or finicky in that you do have to get every single row correct, and there isn't much room for modification if you are looking to modify this pattern. I think it's done this way because it is knit sideways, so it is a newer construction for a lot of people. And so if you want to get the stripes exactly as the sample indicates, then you kind of have to follow her pattern exactly to the letter. Also, setup is done way in advance. So if you want to modify anything, say the width of the garment, then you have to do it way 3 steps in advance of where you currently are. So how the construction works is that you first cast on a provisional cast on for the back panel. You knit the back panel one way, and then you knit it the other way, and you have a small back panel. And you wouldn't think that it fits, but it does, because she does include, then you do the sides, and then you do the front. And how it works is that then after you're done all of that, you do a 3-needle bind off here. So within the front part, you shape the V, as well as you have these shoulder stitches here you shape. And then when you first try it on, it kind of is funky because you don't have the V-neck here, the contrast all holding it together. So it's not one of the garments where you can try it on as you go and fix it as you go. It's one of those where you really want to make sure that you're on gauge for both your rows and your stitches. But in this case, the row gauge is probably a little more important because it determines the width of the sweater rather than the stitch gauge, which would then determine the length. So after you're done one side, then you do the other side, and it kind of all just comes together magically, especially with the stripe pattern. But the thing is, at the end of the day, you do have quite a few ends to weave in because you are cutting your yarn in multiple places to get all of the construction correct. I think when you go through it, it is quite satisfying to see the stripes line up in the right places. However, it is one of the garments where you can't just leave it. You do always have to refer to the pattern. And it also took a very long time because you are purling all of these rows. So as much as you're knitting, you are purling because it is done back and forth, and you can kind of see it as like a long cape almost before you stitch everything together. And so it is something to keep in mind. If you don't like purling, I would stay away from this garment. But if you don't mind and you want to try this construction, then I would definitely recommend it because it is super interesting. I did the sleeveless version, but a lot of people also did the long sleeve version, and their versions look very beautiful. And I don't see any difference from when they're doing it back and forth to when they join in the round for the sleeve and go down. So it's all up to you of what you want to do in that regard. But I would say that this is a garment, and it took me the full 2 months to complete it. but I really did enjoy the process of making it. Susanna does recommend a very large positive ease range from 4 to 10 inches, and so I have a lot of drape in my garment, so I think it'll be really nice to wear during the spring and summer. So for me, I put in the contrast color for the large ribbing portion. I know that in the pattern it recommends using the main color, but that of course is up to your discretion. One of my now Instagram friends also made this or test knitted this, and so I will link her down below. Her name is Mamie Grace Designs, and she also has a YouTube channel, and so check her version out if you're interested. She did a really beautiful pop of color, and she did 2 different colored stripes. I can't imagine how many ends she had to weave in, Christy, but I know that for my version, even with just these 2 colors, I had a lot of ends to weave in. Overall, I think Susanna has a lot of well thought out, beautiful patterns, and the pattern is very well constructed. It's easy to follow. You just have to pay attention to it. And her schematics are very nice. She gives you a diagram of what you're supposed to be doing next, so you're never lost. So if this is something you're interested in, then I will definitely link it down below, and I'll also put an Instagram story when the pattern is released. That's all I have to say about this tee, but I really love the small details it has, to like the small pearl ridges, to, just the stripe details, as well as just being knit on a sideways, totally new construction to me. So I am thankful that I was able to test this design. And although I wasn't able to share the progress of me testing it, and it did take quite a long time, I am very excited to be able to wear this. So moving on, my next finished object is Gnoddy, and Gnoddy is also in the Gnomes of Grimblewood book by Sarah Shira, and this is the second pattern in her book, and so I decided to make it. Noodles was the first, Gnoddy is the second. I held 2 fingering weight yarns double to make this in a 3.25 millimeter needle, which is what I like to do because I do have a lot of fingering weight scraps, and also 3.25 it seems to be a popular needle size for me lately. And this I made in Valentine's Day colors, as I said I would. So the purple is from my rainbow socks from the Freckled Whimsy, and that was the contrast color that was given to me by Betsy. Again, thank you, Betsy. And also the pink, the light pink, is Mandy's Making. And this is a mystery skein that I got last year, as well as the nose, the beard color. It is a lighter dusty pink, and this is a color 6840 in Regia 4-ply. I couldn't find my off-white color that I use for most of my gnomes, or all of my gnomes up until this point. I think I stored it away somewhere else. And so when I was looking in my bag, I just decided to take whatever made the most sense, and that was this color. And then the red is from the West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply in 1000 Rouge that I used for my socks last week. And so after I finished those socks, I said I'd probably make a gnome for this month. And so I decided to make Gnoddy. It's the first one that I've ever made. I think she's very cute. And also the beard, again, you do have to knit through the back loop twice instead of knit 2 through the back loop. I like to mention that every time I make one of these beards, just in case somebody who's interested in the specific pattern is watching the video. And this is the only gnome that I've made that has the actual sweater on it. And so it's not a sweater where you take on and off. So the hands are the same as the bauble on the head, and you just stick it in, and then you stuff the sweater and you knit from here down. So it's not much more knitting from a gnome without any sweater on it, but I think that they're very cute. And I plan on just making a gnome hopefully every month. And so then by next year, this time, if anybody asks for gnomes, or if anybody's interested in gnomes, then I'll just have a collection of gnomes to give away. For now, they'll just sit behind me. So if you are interested in the gnome patterns, I definitely recommend checking it out. I think she has 1 or 2 free ones on Ravelry, so I would check out those first to see if it is something that's a little too fiddly for you, or if it's something you're interested in. So I'm getting the most use out of that book in terms of, bang for buck or cost per pattern. And these gnomes don't take much time at all to make. Gnoddy only took me 2 days, Noodles took me 1 day, and so I know that if I ever have a day to spare, then I could pop out a gnome and have that be my gnome for the month. Next, we'll move on to works in progress, and the first one I want to show is just a long tube of ribbing. I'm just doing a 2x2 rib on this. I'm planning on making the Nimi hat, which is a pattern, a toque, a beanie pattern in Sari Nordland's book, Softly Timeless Knits. and I plan on following the decreases for that, but that one had a different stitch count to start. I cast on 120 stitches for my version, and although it looks pretty small, it is very stretchy. And I'm just doing a 2x2 rib all the way up until I almost run out of yarn, and then I'll start doing the decreases. So I think that this will be, if not a thick double folded brim, a triple folded brim. And I'm using a US4, a 3.5 millimeter needle for it. And I'm really happy. This is just one of those projects that I have when she's just in her room, and I'm next to her, then I'll just be knitting. And I don't really need to think about it. So this is a great portable project to have. And I would like to get this done hopefully by next week, just because I don't want it to be on my needles too long, since I think I started this in January, if not in December. I think I started it in January, but I'll have to go back and check. I think when I'm done with this, it might be a hat for myself, but depending on who's around me, I can also gift it. This really beautiful red color is from Dusty Yarn Co. And this is their classic DK in HRH HGH. And so it stands for Her Royal Highness, and HGH is Aubrey, Dusty Yarn Co.'s mom's name, as I said the last time I mentioned this yarn. And so I'm hoping to get through this. So I bought a lot of single skeins in multiple people's Black Friday sales last year, and Small Business Saturday sales. So I'm hoping to get through some of them before this year's rolls around, and I want to make more of these hats. So we'll see which hats I end up making, but I know that this will be one that's done for hopefully next week, if not the week after. Gnoddy had only taken 2 days. This was done before in January, and the project that has been taking most of my energy this week is my Anemone Sweater by Pernille Larsen. And I stopped it at this point because I wanted to show you what it looked like before I steeked it. And so this is my current progress. I have knit the entire bodies. What you do is you knit bottom up, and then you have options to either split and do the front and back flat, or you can knit it in the round, continue knitting in the round and steek it at the end. And so that's what I decided to do, just for my ease. And they really mean it when you can steek it at the end, because then you have the sleeve stitches to steek, but then you also have your front and your back. So this is actually the front where it's longer, and you bind off stitches, but then you cast on your steek reinforcement stitches and you knit up. So you have your 2 shoulder columns as well as your back. You do the same thing, but it is shorter so that the back is higher. So there are no short rows. It's just continued in the pattern. I am going to do a 3 needle bind off instead of a Kitchener stitch that they recommend for the shoulders, just to keep the structure a little more tight. But other than that, I followed the pattern exactly. I have done my reinforced steeking. So I did use just the same color, knitting for olive, merino, and wheat to reinforce my steeks. I'm not sure if you can tell. And so all I have to do is cut this middle line down here, and I'll be good to go, hopefully. And I have also weaved in all of my ends, and so I won't have any ends that will hopefully get in the way when I'm steeking or accidentally cut too short. But I haven't cut the ends yet. So this is what my inside of my sweater looks like. It's kind of a mess, but you do see all of the ends. And I think that some of my floats are quite long, but once I block it out, usually it flattens out a little bit. The longest ones, of course, are the ones where they had the longest floats in between, and I just wanted to be extra careful with those because I didn't want it to pucker in certain places. I'm using the recommended needle size, which is a US 6, a 4 millimeter for this, and I'm following basically everything to pattern, except for one thing, which is that I did shorten the chart by 1 repeat. So not 1 full repeat, I guess a half a repeat, since 1 full repeat is 2 of these flowers. I did shorten it by 1 just because I was looking at other people's projects online, and a lot of people's sweaters seem to be longer than where I would want my sweater to hit, which is just at or above the hip bone. And all of my jeans are high-waisted, so I don't have to worry about it being too high. And I think with this much length and from the underarm to the hem, I don't need to worry about that as well. So I think my hem I also shortened by just 1 inch. And so overall the sweater should be a little more cropped than what is in the pattern. Because I didn't do a half a repeat, one flower repeat from the chart, I did have to move my beginning of round by 5 stitches, but that wasn't an issue. I don't think you can tell that it's really been moved from up here to down here. And I think that once I block it, I might steam block it before I steek it, but also I kind of want to see it just block out at the end, so I might not. I think that I will definitely cut into it. I'll steek into it today, and then this will be definitely done by next week, and we can talk more about how it fits then. But I'm very happy with the progress. It has been moving quite quickly. The chart is very memorizable, and just the fact that there are different colors of flowers, I think makes it very pretty. I'll again have the colors up on the screen because there are so many to list, but I am making it in Isayer Alpaca 2 for the contrast color, as well as soft silk mohair from Knitting for Olive in a similar color, and some of them worked out better than others. Is definitely marling in some colors. I'm not sure if you can see for this pink flower especially. I think there is a little more marling where you can kind of tell that the silk mohair as well as the yarn, the wool, they don't completely blend together. And also Isayer Alpaca 2 is 50% alpaca and 50% wool, and so it is a little more fluffy. And I was slightly worried also that I would run out of this green color, but I don't think that's an issue, especially with just having to do the sleeves now. I think that I'll be okay on that front, and I have a lot of the other colors left, and so even with the wheat from Knitting for Olive, and so I don't think that will be a concern as well. This is my priority project for this week, so by next week this one will definitely be finished, and I'm so excited to just block it and see how it wears. And talking about next week, my family, we are going to Asia, that as I've hinted, next week, and we'll be there for just over 2 weeks. But I will have a regular video next week, and in that video I plan on sharing what I'm going to take to Asia to knit, just because I think I'll have a little bit of time in Korea. I don't think I'll have a ton of time in Hong Kong, so we are going to both Korea and Hong Kong for my husband's cousin's wedding, and that's the majority of why we are going, but we are stopping by Korea to see my parents first. So I'm not sure 100% of what we'll get up to when I'm in Korea, but we are going with both our kids. I'm sure we'll be very busy. I'm not sure how much time I will have to knit, especially on the plane. I love to knit on the plane, but just having a lap infant, it probably won't be that easily. Having a lap infant and a toddler, I think it's going to be almost nearly impossible. So I am planning some projects on what I would like to take, but because we have limited suitcase space as well, we'll have to see what I can kind of sneak in. And so one of the projects that has just come up and that I would love to make is the Tally Alley socks that was just previously released. The Tally Alley socks is a pattern by Michelle Frazetta, and I wasn't able to test knit for this pattern because I had so many other test knits going on, but I really do love the pattern, so I would love to make it. And I'm not sure if you remember, but this is the yarn, another yarn that Betsy has gifted, and this is Madeline Tosh Twist Light. And Betsy gave it during one of the Maker's Night, and she's already wound it up into 2 separate skeins. And I thought that because this is already packaged like this, I could take this, but that I would get started and I would pair it with this color, which is Stroll Fingering, and this is in Vibrant Violet. So I think these 2 colors for the Tally Alley socks could be very beautiful together, and I'm just starting the cuff so that I could get it started. Hopefully I could get some of the pattern memorized, and so it will be quite mindless when I'm actually knitting through it. The Tally Alley socks has a shadow wrap heel, and I talked last week about shadow wrap versus heel flap and gusset, and when the designer suggests it, and when it keeps with the pattern, I'll stick with the shadow wrap heel. I think it is easier than the suggested afterthought heel. Michelle has both afterthought and shadow wrap heel instructions in her pattern. But in the future, when I am knitting just plain vanilla socks, I'll probably go with heel flap and gusset. So that's all for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I will definitely catch you up next week into what I'll be packing to go to my trip to Asia. If you can, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much. Bye.